information. I'm going to read you what we are putting together. We're redoing the walls that talk, and our Chautauqua mural is right over here. So I'm going to read you some information that probably some of you have never heard. The word Chautauqua is an Iroquois word, and it means two moccasins tied together, or jumping fish. These words describe the lake in Lake Chautauqua, New York, where John Vinson and Lewis Miller had the first Chautauqua meeting for their Sunday school teachers in 1874. This summer camp became the Chautauqua Institution. This Chautauqua movement was never affiliated with any one denomination, but its beginning was with the Methodist Church. The Louisiana Chautauqua was formed by teachers who wanted to better their teaching skills. This gave the Louisiana Chautauqua the privilege of being the first summer school for teachers in Louisiana. Maddie Williams, a teacher from Chautauqua Parish, is the mother of the Chautauqua. The setting was north of Ruston on property known as Griffin Springs. We know it now as Tomalodge. Griffin Springs was named after a Mr. Griffin who owned it and bottled the water out there as a business enterprise to make money. He did not make much money, as far as we know from the books, but he did own the property first. The Louisiana...
Excuse me, I was going to say
okay.
that the water supposedly, he was a pharmacist, and he said that the water had medicinal properties.
He did, but it didn't seem to make any money. It does have it? Does it have it?
made him well.
Oh. The Louisiana Chautauqua was a very popular organization for teachers and the citizens of Ruston and Lincoln Parish. So popular that the Chautauqua is the reason that the Louisiana legislators chose Ruston for the home of Louisiana Tech in 1894. The citizens of Lincoln Parish have always cherished education. Thousands would venture to Ruston to participate in this institution every summer. Private investors built a hotel and small apartments for the guests. If you look across the hall, right behind you all, is the Chautauqua Hotel. Lincoln Parish was also the home of the only black Chautauqua in the United States. This was incorporated in 1906, and the meeting place was near the town of Grambling. Now, I have to tell you about our speaker tonight, because when she was in Louisiana Tech, she wanted to do her term paper on the black Chautauqua, much to her teacher's dismay, I think. But she did. So I have her term paper in my office. It's excellent, and only Kay. And look at Kay tonight as our speaker. So I just have to applaud you, Kay. We are very proud of our Chautauqua history in Lincoln Parish, and I am very proud of Kay Reiser Prince, a 5-generation offspring of the Reiser family. She's going to be talking about that family in depth tonight, because they were the ones that started this Plankville that she's going to share with us. Kay was in high school with me, and she was just such an inspiration. She and Mrs. Turnbow were very good friends, and I moved here from Alexandria, and I just always looked up to Kay. And she was a wonderful Pepette leader. I think you were president, weren't you? Just a fabulous high school mentor. So I'm going to turn the program over to Kay. Kay?
Thank you, Mary. Yes, when I was a student and we had to select a topic, it was the Louisiana literature class, and we had to select a topic pertaining to Louisiana, and I chose the Chautauqua, and it was Dr. Frances Fletcher, and she had to okay your topic, and I chose that, and she said, "I know all there is to know about the Chautauqua." I could not approve that. Well, and I said, "But I don't, and I want to know," and so I did it anyway. And then I turned up that information about the colored Chautauqua, and she didn't know that existed. So, I made an A on the paper and an A in the class. It was something. If you can't hear me, say so and I will attach the microphone, okay? But I think I talk long enough that no one will have a problem hearing me. Well, you've come to hear about Plankville. And Plankville didn't exist very long. I think what we can surmise from the change of name, though, is the fact that corruption came with the territory. Uh, Actually, I'll go back a little further. Martin McElroy, M-C-L-E-R-O-Y, Martin McElroy and his family and the Risers all lived around Talladega in Alabama. And Martin McElroy's oldest daughter married Adam Riser. And he and Mr. McElroy and his wife had 8 children, 5 boys and 3 daughters. And she died. She died young. And in his grief, he just said, left the kids, the younger kids, with the older ones, and he headed west. And as he crossed Mississippi, he kept hearing about this wonderful land, this rich land, and the virgin forest west of the Washita River. And that became his destination. And he came here and he settled, he lived among the friendly Indians down around the Dugdamona, which is just south of town at the Lincoln-Jackson line. And he settled there, and we don't know how long he was there. And I can't figure out how he made contact with his children to tell them to come, that it really, truly was a wonderful area, and that when McElroy, I've always been told when Adam Riser came here, he bought 9,000 acres of land for $1.25 an acre. Well, in my research for tonight, I found that it was not Adam, it was his father-in-law that did that. But to entice his children to come, he was willing to give them land, and that is what he did. Adam Riser, we don't know for sure when he came. What I learned today in doing my research, I went back to the library today to verify what I had learned. And there is a book of maps there of property owners, the original property owners and all, and it's blocked off in section, range, township, the whole thing that I don't remember a lot about, except that a section is 640 acres, I believe. Am I right, Philip? Okay. All right. So in looking that up and looking up the family names, McElroy and then Riser, I found that actually Adam Riser first went to Wynn Parish and settled there, and he had many acres down there, so he easily could have purchased that land here. But anyway, I don't know when he went there, and I don't know why he left, but he was in business there. And Wesley tells me that ledgers from his general mercantile store there are in the archives at Northwestern. Now, the ledgers from Plankville, Nolan is Tech's archivist, and they are there. the ones from Plankville. But anyway, so Adam Reiser does join, brings his family, and he has 5 sons and a daughter. And they join, plus he has McElroy's younger kids. And they join Mr. McElroy here. And south of town, let's see, adjacent next to Iron Rock Farm that we know, the Baby Hayes house. It was the Martin home place. In that pasture, on the north side of that pasture, is a little grove of trees. And that is where Adam Reiser's home was. He built that home, his home there. And he set up his business, though, more at the crossroads where Reiser Road and Tennessee Avenue cross 167 in that area. And he had a sawmill. He had this general mercantile store, and he had a tannery. And I say, you know, he must have been pretty dull, or he wouldn't have named the place Plankville. But anyway, he did, and he continued business, and in about 1855, Henry Bonner came there, and he was the surveyor for a railroad company, and it was not the V.S.P. It was, I can't remember the name, but it preceded, but it's the company that sold to the Vicksburg, Shreveport, and Pacific Railroad. Anyway, he was surveying for a railroad, and the plan was for the railroad to come from Monroe to, we call it Calhoun, but it was Fortville to them, because there were too far, the road ended, and the north road went to Vienna, and the south road went to Vernon. And those were the 2 business communities for the area. Well, anyway, Mr. Bonner so impressed Mr. Reiser that he changed the name of the community from Plankville to Bonner. That's why I said corruption. Anyway, we all know that went awry too. But he had a very thriving business there. And in the first years, the business was, for the time, lucrative in that it would bring in like $10,000 to $20,000 a year there for several years. But as time moved on, it grew. And these ledgers document this, but they show only the charge sales to like $50,000 to $60,000. Okay, so we're talking about the 50s and the 60s. And in 1855, I bring this in because I think it's so important to that community and to Ruston. Robert Edwin Russ, and his stepfather came to this area, and he settled on what we know to be Iron Rock Farm, or the Martin home place. That's where they settled. The mail, the post office, was at Reiser's store at Plankville, and that was instituted by the United States Postal Service in 1855. Okay, Russ, that's where he got his mail, and that's where he hung out in today's terms, and to find out what was going on, and so forth and so on. He and his stepfather. His stepfather, they came in 55. His stepfather died in 1858. He was only 64 years old at the time. And he's actually buried in Riser Cemetery. I went out there today to see what his lifespan was when he died. And, but anyway, with the talk of the railroad and so forth, in 1859, Robert Russ approached Wooten Richardson, who owned the plantation where Ruston is. And he said, I don't have any money, but I'd like to buy your plantation, and I will pay you half of it, and the half was $3,400, on January the 1st, 1859. Now, this man came to this area at 25. So 4 years later, he's 29, and with a handshake, he buys a plantation with the promise to pay half of it January the 1st, 1859, and the other half January the 1st, 1860. And the deal was made with a handshake. Russ became a farmer. The only problem was he realized something was wrong with the soil. That is not going to work. And that's when Russ approached the railroad with a better deal. He wasn't going to name the community after Mr. Bonner or the railroad, but he was give them 150-foot right-of-way, the entire width of his property, plus area for park, railroad park, and property for a depot, all for $50. And so we know the rest of that story. But back to Plankville, in 1860 it was that it became Bonner. And all of this other occurred sometime after that. As I said, Adam Reiser came here and he established the store, a sawmill, a tannery, and the tannery served a huge area. And in addition to that, he farmed and grew cotton and corn. And he was very concerned about education, and he created the Reiser School on his property. And the teacher was was one of the McElroy women, his sister-in-law, and that he and his wife had helped to rear. And I found this so interesting. They sent her, I never knew this existed, to the Claiborne, it was outside of Homer, the Claiborne College for Women. That's not the exact name. I can't remember. Do you remember?
The Masonic Lodge, I think, operated.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But it was an institution of higher learning for women. And you know, married women could not teach back then and for a long time thereafter. But that he got her educated and he brought her back and she taught at the school. And see, I bring that out because I think it's so important, because education is important and it's been vital to our community, to Ruston. Look what it's done for Ruston. And Russ himself was also very, very interested in education. Now, the reason I question whether Adam Reiser bought the 9,000 acres of land for $1.25 is in the library, the book of land maps. Let me see if I have a copy. I made a lot of copies. And we didn't know, I must have filed it wrong. But it doesn't show an area that would have constituted 9,000 acres of land. However, the resources, other people that have studied that area and have written about Plankville and Adam Reiser and so forth, they have different opinions too as to how it all came about and who did what. It just doesn't all go together. One was Henry Reiser. He was the first cousin of my dad's, and his father and my grandfather both were grandsons of Adam Reiser. And but when my parents in 1943 bought 32 acres on Moore's Dairy Road, where I grew up, they had an abstract done, and that abstract showed that property as part of Adam Reiser's huge, it went all the way back, and even the fairgrounds in Woodland Park, and it went up really, let's see, Russ's property, the Richardson plantation, went to Line Avenue. That's beside the old Green Clinic, okay? And Adam Reiser's property came up that far. So it's, I can't tell you everything is really factual. I can document, but that doesn't mean it's right, is what I have found out. And Adam Reiser's ledgers, I want to call some names for you. These are people that charged there. Of course, other members of the Reiser family, Causey, Mundy, Chandler, Sanders, Russ, Henderson, Reed. Oh, and they would say things. Now, this is for the lady. It was so funny to me to read that. Mallory, Lane, Gramling, McElroy, Edmondson, Harper, Kinman, Redwine, Stewart, Spinks, Pierce, Whitlock, Tomlinson, Gallatt, Jackson. And, you know, he had so many sons and he had so many brother-in-laws, they all married all those people. Another thing that I found to be very interesting, see, when he picked that site, he did his business at Vernon. And the reason I cannot check and verify the land purchase, it was in Jackson Parish, and the courthouse was at Vernon, and the courthouse burned and burned all the records. When Jackson Parish established another parish seat, which was at Jonesboro, they built another courthouse, and eventually that courthouse burned, and so all of those records were destroyed. We know that Lincoln Parish was established in 1873, and that the parish line goes below, well, it goes to the Doug Demona, where that crook is. And where is that map? I can kind of, sort of show you where. I'm sorry, Margaret Ann. Yeah.
It's created out of the southern part of Union and the northern part of Jackson.
And, but Ben,
And a little bit of Bienville, yeah.
yeah, what about Claiborne?
I don't know about Claiborne, but the little northeast corner of Bienville.
Just a wiggly line,
Yeah.
that's right. And I love this. It was right in this area where Plankville and Bonner and the cemetery are. And I'm not sure where Vernon would have been, but I would think,
Somewhere around that where you got your figure.
okay, and Vienna then would be up here.
Do you know?
Yeah. 15 miles supposedly from each place. And, but that became, you know, it was such a convenient location for the people. There was also the red wine community. On these land maps, I found it really interesting. Red wine, Kavanaugh, Clinton, and all of us went to school with some of the Clintons and and the Kavanaughs and all. And the red wine community was further west. And then Wesley Chapel would be to the northwest of Clay. I think I'm right saying that. Okay, and how did that come into being? Some of Miriam's kinfolks, the Methodist circuit rider preacher, Mr. Pipes, Abraham Pipes, that was one on his stop. And once a year, they would have a gathering, and the people from the area would gather there, and it was like a vacation, a resort. I mean, it was refreshing, and they camped and stayed for days and all, and that's how Wesley Chapel got established. But those people came to the store there also. And it did thrive until Ruston got businesses going, that kind of thing. Listen to this. A box of matches was 11 cents. These were prices that were charged to people and items. 2 spools of thread, 25 cents. What does a spool of thread cost now? $4 or so.
Except that was more than an hour's, that was 2 hours of labor.
Yes. And 5 pounds of tobacco, $4.50. A box of pepper was 25 cents. 24 pounds of salt was 72 cents. That's unbelievable, isn't it? 3 yards of calico, which is fabric, was $2.34. A blanket was $3. A bonnet was $11. That just seems so out of sync to me. And eyeglasses, 38 cents. A side saddle, $22. And a powder puff, 45 cents. A cloth, in other words, fabric coat, $14.50. And a pound of baking soda was 20 cents. Times have changed. No doubt about that. Now, when the VP&S Railroad, the Vicksburg, Shreveport, and Pacific came through, and you know, Shudrant was opened became Shudrant in 1883, and the railroad reached Ruston in 1883, but Ruston did not become incorporated until 1884. Do you have any questions that I might answer? If I can't, Philip can. Patricia?
The roads were 167 so that was a main thoroughfare? And
Actually, it didn't go further south, I don't think. I think when it got to Plankville, it turned, and that was first known as the Old Township road, and it meandered down through Riser property to Vernon, past the causes and
And then on up to the
Clay,
fort
yeah.
at Callahan.
yes,
And then the
That's
other
right.
road went then from, so you didn't have a north-south road from, say, Plankville to Vienna?
Yes, the road went from Vienna to Plankville, and then it curved to the southeast to Vernon.
yes,
There was nothing down what we consider 167.
right.
The road went through Plankville, and then it veered to the east to go to Vernon.
So how'd you get to Jonesboro?
Best way you could.
Jonesboro, yeah. Hey, and it wasn't Jonesboro, do you know what it was? Macedonia.
Oh,
So how did they get their goods?
That's what I don't understand. That's why I question everything that I read. How did he have all these goods there? Think of the poor animals. Listen, in other previous research and on that timeline, wasn't it 1884 that Robert E. Russ brought the first mules to Ruston? And so what did they do before that?
Did they come from, I'm just guessing now, from the Washita River?
Like the
With
goods
two
would
horse
have,
and buggy.
the goods would have gone to Monroe or Trenton, and then taken the road to Forksville, and then veered south to Vernon, and then they'd have to come back up.
So, okay, that's how they got there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And why did they call it Forkville? Not because the roads separated, but because they had to. The road had to. There was a huge bayou there, Bayou Choudre, Choudree, with an accent mark over the R. Now, I don't speak French, and I don't speak what the Indians spoke. So I don't know, but I think that would be French. And that's, Choudron is derived from that. And that bayou was Tremont Bottom and meandered down just south of the railroad in Choudron, out that way. I
keep
wish,
in mind that the main road was the east-west road, the Y road.
yes,
They had a
and that's,
stagecoach.
mhm. That's right. And the stagecoach stopped at Douglas. There was a station there at the Squire Creek intersection at Douglas.
It went on to Vernon,
That's right.
on to Arcadia, then
Mhm.
Shreveport.
And but that stagecoach stop was there, and I guess these stops were placed as far apart as the stage could
You
go.
asked a while ago, where did the merchants get their goods? I've seen some old bill of ladings, I guess you call it, of merchants in this area, and they haul them off of steamboats on the Washita River and as far west as Lake Vistano.
Oh, really?
And that's a long ways to haul them. Lake
That
Vistano.
is true.
They had steamboats that came up along by Lake Vistano and had warehouses there, south of Minden.
That's interesting. Y'all know that Philip taught Louisiana history and has done a tremendous amount of research
But
too.
very little land transportation for goods, you know, they're
Mhm.
mostly up by water.
But Vernon and Plainfield didn't have water. I mean, they had to get
Yeah,
those.
they had to go to the river. and
Yeah.
Yes, they
the
had to.
lakes.
And Vernon was really thriving. I mean, like I've read it in a college and it was really thriving, right, Philip?
Yes, it really, that's what I've
I don't
always,
remember right now. I know the courthouse burned down there.
But I rode up there one day, just out of curiosity, and it's nothing now. I mean,
oh,
it's
listen,
houses are-
John Sachs rides a bike all over Lincoln Parish. And so when I want to know where something is, I call John and I'll say, I want you to take me here or there. Well, I said, I want you to take me to Vernon. So we go to Clay and we go east from Clay, and eventually the road is a T, it intersects. And I said, and he stopped. And I said, well, which way are you going? And he said, we're there.
There are some cemeteries that are different.
There is one rundown building in that corner to the left, and that road goes back up.
There's a fire deal.
Yeah. Mhm.
Lots of oil and gas in it, you know, lots of oil.
Oh, yes, gas in
And
particular.
Angus Farm, there's an Angus Farm there.
Oh, really? I bet that's Kingland Ranch, is it? Or is that further over to?
Angus Farm.
In that day and age, how did a community reconstruct ownership when all the records burned up in the courthouse?
That's an excellent question. See, I've wondered too, and that's why, I said, I don't know how accurate anything is.
That's one reason Turner burned all the courthouses, was to do with what damage the community could.
Well, I didn't think about that either.
A lot of the local people on the courthouses that Homer wanted to be the parish seat of Cleveland Parish when Cleveland Parish was down at Athens. And, they wouldn't give it up. And Homer outgrew Athens. It got bigger and said they deserved the courthouse. And they couldn't get it legally, so one night a bunch of men from, leading citizens from Homer came down and set the courthouse on fire and burned it down in Athens and declared Homer to be the parish seat.
Like I said, corruption came.
And James, I read one time that when something like that happened, then to prove ownership, the owner had to bring what papers he had, and then if he didn't have any, his word plus 2 witnesses gave a beginning for a record. Now, I don't know if that's true, but
Okay, I also, in looking back at some old property records in Ruston, prior to surveying or accurate surveying, land descriptions might be from Sally Jones's garden gate down to the big oak tree, and then, it was just landmarks.
Or a
that
cedar
would
post. I can,
would rot away over time and memories, and so there's not an accurate survey.
this is a family map. That's what the title of the book is. And this, I've colored Martin McElroy's property there.
You mentioned the book of the library of property owners or something like that. Is that just for this area or was it for several
Well,
parishes?
yes, it would say property map, family maps for Lincoln Parish.
Yeah.
There's a book, Bienville, one,
Oh, really?
yeah, for
I'd like to see that.
each parish. And like, it has all kinds of maps in there. This one, cities and towns in Lincoln Parish. And that's how I found
What's the
where.
date for that?
No, it didn't say, and I did look for that. And this was cities and towns. This was cemeteries. And it would tell, oh, here we go. Family maps of Lincoln Parish, Louisiana. But I did not find the date on that. And then at the appendix, in the maps of the land, it gives a description like east, 1/2 of the northwest, whatever. And the appendix in the book tells you how many acres that amounted to.
And it always said more or less.
Yes, that's right. And I can remember hearing my uncle say out at it was relative to family property at Douglas. That, somewhere out there, that's a short section. I said, what do you mean it's a short section? You know, these lines are straight, you know. And so now I know what he meant. The yellow on this was all Wooten Richardson's property, and it's not in a square, which I found interesting.
What was the expected wage of a worker in 1850 to 1870? You see, land was $1 an acre, and bread was 25 cents a spool, or whatever it was. What did a person make?
I wondered,
I
and
think
see,
it's
I
about
didn't,
10 cents an hour.
Yeah, because you need to translate that into hours of work, you know,
Yeah,
to
so,
make it rational.
well, I thought babysitting when I was a teenager, 50 cents an hour was just robbery.
They paid teachers $40 a month in 1930, you know.
Yeah,
Well,
And-
my father made $30 a month in the 30s.
I just kind of wonder.
I think
How long
it was
did it
around,
happen?
labor, like the minimum wage, or labor's wage was around 10 cents an hour.
when Parish.
So if something costs 25 cents, that's two and a half hours.
Stadium winter.
So things were actually quite expensive.
Somebody said that.
Kay, in looking at your maps, particularly early Ruston, did you run across a name of any kind of a settlement just east of Ruston, like 1 mile, maybe right about where Ruston Elementary is now, just past that? I remember seeing a map years ago that there were some railroad line shacks there, and there was a name given to that. And I'm real curious as to how to get back to that again. And I wondered if you ever saw a map that had a,
When that comes your way, kind of look at it
okay,
and see.
okay.
There were a lot of familiar names on the maps, you know, to me.
Alan, a little bit further to the east was Romeville, for the Rome family. Highway 80 and what's Rough Edge Road now.
No, that might have started at the Rough Edge Road, but it was like from there.
Well, I mean, it went both directions from
Yeah.
that, but the school was actually there at that intersection. of Rough
And
Edge
that
Road
har-
and
that- I don't know the name of it. The only thing I've ever heard was the Hardshell Baptist Church.
Primitive Baptist Church.
Oh, okay. At the bridge, and that was on Rome property. And that it went all
Communities
the,
or villages back then weren't like what we think of today, where you got at the fine city limits. Like Plankville was everything from what is now the parish line to the power plant on McDonald. You know, so it was a huge area. Romeville would be where, from roughly where Plankville stopped, practically all the way to Shooter.
and then it was because the Romes, two brothers opened a store and
That was the village or town that you lived in, even though you might have been 10 miles out of the country.
yeah. Any question or comment?
So once again, Plainville, I'm a little bit confused again. What was, where was it?
Plankville was actually at that intersection of where Tennessee crosses 167 and turns into Riser Road before you go back at the Plankville. And Wesley has read somewhere that his store was where those duplexes are, adjacent to Riser Cemetery.
That's what
I-
I've always heard.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm under the impression from my childhood that they were right there at the corner of Riser Road and 167, that the store was, and that the sawmill was across the road. Well, it wasn't a road there then, but anyway, you get the idea.
And Plainville was founded by,
Adam Riser.
And he sold land up Bonner, is that why it was
No, what I've read is that Bonner bought thousands of acres of land all along the route, but I can't find his name on anything.
So he, Riser renamed Plainville Bonner
In
as an
1860,
enticement to get Bonner to
bring the
direct
railroad
through that community.
Here's the
That
possibility.
didn't work out, it ended up going further north and Ruston was created.
yeah.
Plankville could have come from the fact that the earliest buildings could have been crude planks from sawmills, because my hometown was originally called Slab Town, because there was an old sawmill, a very crude sawmill, and they didn't make lumber, but they made slabs. And so they built, all the early buildings were built out of slabs. And in 1848, the federal government put a post office there, renamed it Ringo. Major Ringo was one of the heroes of the Mexican War, named in his honor.
Uh-huh.
But it was originally called Slab Town
Interesting.
because of the sawmill. So maybe they had a crude sawmill there that used planks that they used to build some of the first
Yeah,
buildings
sawmill.
with.
Well, there wasn't a highway by any means. The highway would have been from Vienna to Plankville to Vernon that way, but there had to be some type of road, if you will, over to Wesley Chapel and down to Red Wine and Clay.
Yeah, well,
and,
Woodville was a post office.
yeah, Woodville, yeah.
The Hintons lived over there.
That's right, yeah. Uh-huh.
Most people
Mary?
probably realize it, but when Ruston was created, they named the north-south streets after the communities that the people came from to come to Ruston. It wasn't Plainville, but Bonner, Sparta,
Thank God they
Vernon,
didn't name it
Vienna,
Plankville.
Trenton, and of course, most of those, very shortly after Ruston was created, completely dried up and blew away. There is no Sparta anymore, there is no Vernon anymore.
Mary?
I've only been at Richardson by marriage for 60 years, and I still don't know, but this working Richardson, do you have any information? I know he was mayor, I knew that, but wasn't he one?
I don't think he was ever the mayor. He sold the property to Russ, and the property became Ruston. But I do know this, we've talked about courthouses and records and so forth. About 3 months before he died, he came to Robert E. Russ, and he said, look, you know, I'm old, I'm not in good health. And he said, I think we ought to get this in writing, the transfer of this land. It needs to be in writing, because after I'm gone, there's no record. And I want it to say that you have paid for it, you know, you bought and paid for it, and you are the rightful owner.
I've always been told that his records were one of the ones that place that burned, and I've never been able to get any information. And also, Revel, is that?
Revel sounds like Pea Ridge to me.
Revel?
Revels, R-E-V-E-L-L. Some Revels traded at my daddy's store, and they were from Pea Ridge.
There is an article in the North Louisiana History Journal about Wooten Richardson, and the title of it is The Man Who Sold Ruston.
That's right.
And Jean Light, y'all remember Jean? She
Uh-huh.
wrote it. It's in the 1970s, sometime during that, and it's in that bookcase in there, all those North Louisiana History Journals that I donated. So if anybody wants to read an entire
Mary, I
article
will
about
try to make a copy of that article. But I would tell you this, you know, Paul's and Joe's next door neighbor was Miss Molly Richardson. Mama Sam's, all I know. At the corner of Menden Street and Georgia. I'm getting good at these streets in Ruston. And I've never known the names of streets, but I knew where people live. But anyway, her husband was a grandson of Wooten Richardson. And they were kin. Paul's dad and Papa Sam. Mhm.
It was a different Richardson from Legs Richardson, who was a mayor.
Yes,
Different
yes,
families.
yes. Uh-huh. You know, mentioning Wooten Richardson, we have Wooten Richardson's desk here, don't we?
That came from the Richardson legs, that came, so if, he's the one, the same family.
It's the same family, okay?
Okay.
It was in the house down here, you know, Miss.
The Henderson
The
house.
Henderson house. Yes.
Okay.
Mayor's desk.
But I will,
Secretary, it's back in this back room. And when I took this job, it was upstairs in that secret room that's locked up. And Frederick Richardson hounded me. That has to come downstairs. So I finally got Gary Cathy's men to bring it downstairs. Thank goodness he got to see it downstairs. So it's in that room.
yeah. But I'll get
That
that
was Frederick gave that.
and get that copy of that article to you. But he had come here very early and settled and had this plantation here. And obviously, he was a wise man. I've heard him referred to as a land speculator. I'm not sure what that means. But when he sold the property here, this is Wooten Richardson, he moved to what we know to be Cooktown. And he donated the property for Cook Cemetery. Well, after Cooktown, he moved to Tarbutton Road, and Mr. Tarbutton was a son-in-law. My daddy called him Mr. Button. Pine Ridge, Jersey farm.
Yeah.
But I feel so blessed to have grown up here. My daddy knew everybody. And talk about little back roads. They were roads, but they weren't roads, you know. We would ride horses, and we somewhere down where Tennessee Avenue intersects with Moore's Dairy Road, just up the hill from that intersection, and it's not visible now because I've been to see. But anyway, there was a little lane of a road, I mean, through the woods back that way, and it came out down at Uncle John Nelson's place on Riser Road. And Daddy said that was the old roadway, and that would make sense now that I know that that property east of there was part of his farm and all. No, but back to Wooten Richardson. He obviously realized, too, that something happens to the land when you grow the same crops and, you know, that there's richer land somewhere else. And I say that because he kept moving. And then you wear it out. Well, he was largely responsible for the LSU experiment station at Calhoun. He was very active. He represented the farmers in Lincoln Parish before the legislature in Baton Rouge. I was told that it's his son-in-law, Judge Gunby in Monroe, but when I looked at the list of Russ's children, none of them married a Gunby. So,
It's gonna be hanging in this parlor in here.
okay, good. Well, anyway, he and Judge Gunby were the ones that appealed for there to be established that experiment station. And it was there until within the last 5 years. But they had lectures and they helped farmers, the Farmers Union it was called.
I just remembered something that Frederick told me about this secretary in here. This is a dispute, I think, of some sort. He said that was in the Robert Russ house. And I said, oh, I thought Robert Russ built this house. And he said, no, it was the Richardson house. So when you see
by the ice cream plant, wasn't it? Wasn't
by
it?
Midwest. It was where Hillcrest was.
And he said this piece of furniture was in the Richardson house, that, in the right place.
Now this, talk about things that turn up, that you question and research. Russ died in 1902, isn't that correct? I believe that's correct. But, and I mean, that was in the back of my mind and I'm reading along. Supposedly, he is given a lot of credit for the establishment of Hillcrest and Eastland. How could he? I mean, those schools weren't built anywhere near 1902. So that, you see, I just have a questioning mind.
He also donated land to the earliest churches in town too.
That's true. The Methodist, First Baptist, and the Presbyterian, and in the entire 400 block of North Trenton for the Ruston College, which became Ruston High, and then Ruston Junior High, and that's where the Civic Center is. Yeah.
Where was the original campus for Louisiana Tech?
The original campus, do you know where those two worn out, kind of crumbly brick pillars are across from the railroad? Behind, yeah, uh-huh.
I walked through those crumbly things, many of them.
Yeah.
They weren't crumbly back then.
And actually, Russ would trade, he traded with Mr. Stubbs for services. He gave him, I think it was 10 acres of land for him to do the surveying and lay out the town. And then when Stubbs left town, I don't know what happened, how they got crossways. But anyway, Frank Stubbs moved back to Monroe, or moved to Monroe. But he donated that 10 acres to the state for a college.
Stubbs did,
Stubbs did.
Frank Stubbs.
Mm-hmm. And the first name was Ruston College, and then Louisiana Polytechnic Oh, right, Louisiana Industrial Institute, was it, Nolan?
Right.
And then, Ruston College was downtown. That was,
That was separate school.
yes, that was entirely separate, and that was Louisiana Industrial Institute. Then, in 1921, it became Louisiana Polytechnic Institute, and according to Keith Prince, it was 1970 when that became Louisiana Tech University.
And you said the precursor to the college was downtown. So that's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, the one downtown was called Ruston College.
And what was it?
It was a Baptist college. A Baptist minister was the president of the school. At one time it was called Ruston Male and Female Academy. And then they changed the name to Ruston College. And then it basically went out of business when Tech was created.
And
There's
interesting.
certificates hanging in this other room, and there where that secretary is from Ruston College, and it was supposed to be very prestigious. And it's one of the reasons we had the Chautauqua, and one
Yes.
of the reasons we went on to have Louisiana Tech,
Yes.
because they said Ruston College was very prestigious,
Mhm.
and all these children went there.
And listen to this. Van Covington was a classmate of mine and John's, and he had older brothers. But anyway, Van Covington grew up next door to Hillcrest. So when I'm doing, this is some time ago, I'm doing research and I'm learning about Wooten Richardson and Robert E. Russ and so forth. And so I emailed Van and I said, Van, did you know that you actually grew up on Robert E. Russ's home place? And he responded, yep, that's my great-grandfather. My grandmother inherited that piece of property. And all those houses around there, those brick houses, were heirs to.
I think where the Lighthouse is was Miss Jimerson, because I went with my mother.
It is,
Miss
yes,
Jimerson.
Miss
She was
Jack
my mother's
Jimerson.
First or second grade teacher.
And that was,
Oh, she was so precious.
Descendant of.
yes. Do you know what? Today I emailed Van and I asked him, I said, was Mrs. Jimerson a daughter or granddaughter? Because Russ had 13 kids. 13 kids. And that house had 2 rooms on either side of a dog trough. I mean, 1 room on each side, 20 by 20. Now, how do you think they fed and clothed 13 kids? And the kitchen was in another building out back. But anyway, Van had told me once upon a time, the property at 400 Trenton, where the Civic Center is now, and actually it was when the Civic Center was to be built there that this all came up. Anyway, Russ donated that property for education, okay? And in the whatever he did, deed, I guess you'd call it, he said that if it's ever not to be used for education, it goes back to my descendants. And some of the family sued to get that, and the court ruled that it had been too long.
Big controversy.
It's what?
The big controversy is whether they could build it over there.
Yes, that's exactly right. But I mean, how can the law be that way?
You hire a good lawyer.
That's, you're right.
Call it the right eminent domain.
Yeah. Okay, if there are no more, first, let me thank y'all for coming out in this dreadful weather.
And thank you, Miss Patty.
Oh, listen, it's a pleasure to be with all of you.
And we give cookbooks to our speakers, so Kay's got a book of cookbooks, and we sell cookbooks to our people that are visiting. So if anybody wants a cookbook, $5 tonight, you can get a cookbook. I think the price in them is $15.